Good afternoon, gentlemen. You're on.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us in our weekly update program, our progressive update program. Today we have a guest who you will find very interesting, Daryl Lamont Jenkins. He's pretty much personified he personifies Antifa. He has been in the scene as long as anyone, publicly exposing extreme right individuals and going after them. As former journalist, he has devoted himself to investigative work and research of these groups and challenging them in practice. He is the founder of One People's Project and IDAVox, which is a social media side. He has been featured in a documentary Alt-Right, Age of Rage, by director Adam Balalau, and was the inspiration behind the character in Guy Nativ's movie Skin. Welcome to the show, Daryl. It's my pleasure to have you here.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to see everybody today.
And let me run a little clip first to show your interactions with the groups.
They're here in Shelbyville, the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists that basically want to try to uproot what today's society is about. And we have a rule that wherever they go, we go. One minute I'm going to be talking with them cordially. The next minute I'm probably punching them in that same mouth they're talking out. I mean, that's just the way it goes. I mean, the truth of the matter is I don't come to the rallies to dance that dance.
Donald Trump was elected because they had a candidate on the other side.
Was elected as a populist. He was
Donald Trump was a billionaire. How the hell could he be a populist?
He was elected as a reasonable man who was going to bring peace.
Sometimes they'll come to me to try to start sparring with me and try to start talking trash, and a couple of times it will be a case of I'm the first black person they ever talked to.
Wait a minute. Excuse me. So did mine. Probably been here longer than yours.
Oh, mine has been here since the 1600s.
Mine has been here since the 1600s too. Yes.
Now, ever since Trump got into the White House, it's just been a full-time job, and that's a shame because we don't make any money doing this. I did go on a leave of absence at my current job, and now I am just doing this full-time.
So, would you like to comment anything about this this particular clip?
Yes, I do, very much so, because one segment, the first segment of that, I was in Shelbyville, Tennessee, about, I would say maybe 3 years ago, in November. It was a rally that was put on by some neo-Nazis. As you see, I was speaking with one of them, a bearded guy by the name of Matthew Heimbach. I had conversations with him in the past, and it was relatively benign in comparison to others that I have been to. The second one is a little bit more interesting because the person that I was talking to in regards to our ancestors and such, that gentleman's name was Edward Clark, and him and his brother Jeffrey Clark, Jeffrey Raphael Clark, were thick as thieves. They were as tight as all get out. And I always make the point about them that when I first met them, which was that day, they seemed to be rather emaciated. They seemed to be just out of sorts, bags under their eyes and things. By the time they showed up in Charlottesville, they seemed like the bill of health. They always seemed to be as if like white supremacy invigorated them. They found something to latch onto that made their they gave their life purpose or something. But a few years later, the Tree of Life shooting in Pittsburgh happened, and the person that is accused of doing that shooting was in correspondence with those two brothers in on a social media network of theirs called Gab, and that got the attention of law enforcement, and Ed Clark committed suicide. The person I was talking to, his brother eventually gotten arrested and was charged with weapons and drug charges, and I believe he's on probation now, but he's pretty much out of the white power scene now for the most part. We haven't seen him active since he had gotten arrested, but it gives you an idea of what kind of people we are dealing with right now. We're not necessarily dealing with folks who are necessarily working with all facilities. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on with individuals, and that's just something to keep in mind as we deal with this crowd. Doesn't excuse them, but it definitely gives us an idea of who we're dealing with.
It definitely strikes me when I watch these interactions how much ignorance is at the base of these things, and how people are manipulated basically by things that are supposed to sound benign, but their ultimate conclusions are pretty extreme.
Right, and I think one of the things that we have to bear in mind is that while we can also recognize that they're human beings and they might just simply need some help, by the same token, they are dealing with things that are going to hurt us in the long run if we don't get a handle on it. I mean, I always tell these folks, and I'll get to this later, that I am going to be obligated to helping those that they may have the potential of hurting if they did not hurt them already. I mean, that's why I do what I do. That's the first mission.
Right. Well, could you define how ethno-nationalists, neo-fascists, and white supremacists differ from each other, and what unites them?
What I would say about ethno-nationalists, I mean, there isn't a lot of daylight between much of that, but there is some. There is some. I think when you are talking about people who are straight up nationalists, you are talking about people who are just concerned about themselves as, whatever race or culture they might be a part of. Whenever you're talking about white supremacists, you are talking about people who want to be dominant over everyone, And when we're talking about separatists, you're saying there's no sense in arguing. I'll just go my way and you go yours, In the end, however, it's all threatening to the greater society, because nationalism means that there are going to be some people that are going to be disregarded by the nationalists because they are not of their nation, so to speak. Separatism means that there will always be that person that resents you, that is building their own society, that's building their own country, and what leads to the white supremacy is the fact that those same people look at what you have and feel you shouldn't. I always tell people, is there one thing about fascists? They can talk about how they want their own country and they want their own nation apart from the socialists, as they prefer to call us, all they want. And we could give them that, but the one thing that fascists don't do is stay within their borders. In fact, whenever I hear them talk like this, they believe that we would fail without them so much that eventually they will have to come back and invade and take us over. So in the end, when you hear them talk about wanting to build their own society, ultimately they are trying to just build something without our interference so that they can make war with us in a more efficient way. That's the way I see it.
And why do you think Trump is so appealing to them, and how does he fit within their agenda?
It's funny. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting, even though Trump has always been a racist, he's never talked like this. He's never brought them out like this in all of his career, whether in the 80s or 90s or what have you. I think it's not so much about Trump as it is about what kind of opportunity they give him. He gives them, I should say. I mean, I have a video on YouTube right now on our One People's Project channel where we are at one of Richard Spencer's, a white supremacist, who was actually in that video. He had something, his organization, National Policy Institute, had something at the National Press Club, and we had a camera set up, people coming out after the meeting, and they're talking to each other, and you don't hear a lot of the scuttlebutt that's going on, but one of the guys is really animated when he starts bringing up Trump. And he says, what about Trump? Why? And this was before the election. What about Trump? Why don't we get Trump in there? Trump will change all of this. And he's saying this to somebody who happens to be a black woman. This was February 2015. Trump was not even in the race yet. He doesn't get into the race until June. So they have been always pushing for Trump for some strange, ungodly reason. Just like they pushed Ron Paul, just like they pushed Pat Buchanan. And I think because they had been successful in getting him into the White House, they look at this as being his Hail Mary. And they're going to try to make the most of it while they can.
It may have to do with his the fact that he was behind the accusations of the Central Park Five and then afterwards the birther movement. So I guess that kind of put him out there.
Well, like I said, he's always been a racist, but he generally didn't have anything to do with the full-on white supremacists in the past. And that was the one thing that was really curious about a lot of folks as we went along. What I would say to that, by the way, is New York City for 30 years has been a relative petri dish for what we eventually would call the alt-right. A lot of the kind of hate mongering that we have seen in the past 4 years, New York has seen in the past 30, ever since maybe even 40. Because when David Dinkins became the first black mayor of New York, all hell broke loose in the city. All of a sudden, a lot of attacks on the black community eventually made them strangers in their city. You know, I mean, when Giuliani became mayor, that was them saying, okay, it's our time now. And they was able to do a lot of things to the black community in the 90s that they're now trying to do today. And what happened just before Trump? The first black president came into being. They were the generation that caused that, as far as they're concerned. So they freaked out just like the first black mayor of New York City freaked them out. And who was mayor? The guy who at the time put out that full-page ad against the Central Park Five and was a New Yorker.
Right.
And look who his attorney is, too.
Yeah. So, and recently, especially in the debate, Trump has put not only drawn an equivalence between Antifa and the far-right organizations, but has gone further and inserted that they are the real problem. The right wing is just responding to them. How do you respond to that?
What I would say to that is what I've been telling people for a while. It's nothing new, really. I mean, they found Antifa to be their new straw man, so to speak. Antifa and Black Lives Matter are all considered, criminal organizations as far as conservatives are concerned. They do it to us. They did it to Black Lives Matter. They did it to Occupy. They did it to anti-war activists. Whomever they see in their way is going to be called the enemy in the most egregious of ways. They need an enemy. They need to go after someone in order to advance themselves. And that's really all this is. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I find it interesting how they want to keep calling Antifa an organization. Antifa's not an organization. It is an idea. But when you try to tell them that, they get offended. They get upset, and they want to try to fight you on that. And my attitude has been, if we were an organization, we would say we are an organization. Black Lives Matter is an organization, and Black Lives Matter is an ideal. If Antifa was an organization, we would say so. I run an anti-fascist organization. Why would they think we would lie? And why do they need us to be an organization? And the reason is this. They don't want to be seen as thought police. They do not want to be seen as attacking people because of what they believe in, because that destroys everything, number one. And number two, that means more enemies to fight. I mean, bottom line is you have to recognize that they are looking at you as a criminal if you are anti-fascist and believe that Black lives matter. And that's what makes them a threat.
And if I understand correctly, my understanding is that there are, although they are decentralized in terms of the many organizations on their fields that are playing a part, they do have structural, authoritative structures within those groups, as opposed to Antifa, which is more of a free-form kind of group of people who are like-minded and come together. Is my understanding correct?
I would say there, as I said before, there are organizations within the anti-fascist movement, of course, mine included. But ultimately, anyone can be anti-fascist if they don't like fascism. I mean, it is that straightforward. I think one of the things that we really do have to try to ignore the claptrap that the right throws at everyone. Yes, it's pervasive. Yes, it's out there in a way that you really have a hard time ignoring it. But if you can't ignore it, at least recognize it for what it is.
And who are the people who are pushing that kind of equivalence and ideas? And do you see fingerprints of that language in Trump's own rhetoric? Can you trace back where that's coming from?
Well, I definitely do see the fingerprints on Trump's rhetoric, most certainly. And where does that rhetoric come from? People like Steve Bannon, people like Stephen Miller, people like Sebastian Gorka, all these folks that have been in his administration over the past 4 years. But we can go on and branch out beyond Trump, because in the end, it is bigger than Trump. I mean, when you do see the more tangible examples, of course, is going to be something like Fox News. And when you see the One America News Network or Newsmax, any right-wing outlet, this is their narrative. This is their thing. You're not going to find truth about Antifa or this political climate so much as you'll just simply see propaganda, because that's all they have in the end. And when you see that it is all coming from those particular circles and doesn't seem to go beyond those circles, you know that's what it is. You know it's their propaganda. You know it's their agenda. So again, this is one of the reasons why we should remember to ignore it and don't get caught up in it. Do not allow it to polarize the rest of us, because that's exactly what they want. My recent concern is particularly about the upcoming election. I'm very concerned about what is about to transpire, and I'll run this scenario by you. It's been run by a journalist at The Atlantic, and I think it's very a likely scenario that will play out, and that is that the elections are going to initially look like Trump is leading. On the day of the elections, the postal votes are going to be counted, and there's going to be a period of time, an interregnum, if you like, in which there's going to be uncertainty about the results of the election. They may try to play various dirty tricks and get these decided by state legislatures through setting up electors. We don't know yet what is going to happen. What we do know is that most likely there's going to be a period of time in which there's going to be chaos and confusion and a lot of anger. And my fear is that
I'm curious to know if, based on your knowledge and your experience of these groups, would you believe that they would seek to exploit the interregnum confusion and the election results dispute that is likely to create more Boogaloo action?
Well, I expected. I mean, they pretty much said that that's what they were going to do. I think we should expect chaos and confusion, but honestly, I don't think it will go any further than that. I think this is going to be a straightforward election that just gets convoluted, and I think it will be intentionally convoluted. But in the end, whoever wins will go to the White House before January 20th. And we will not have to go to any state legislators to decide this. We will not have to go to the Supreme Court to decide this. The voters will decide this. There is rumblings among the right saying that they are going to do something after the election, be it a civil war, to go out on attack or what have you. And this society is prepared for that. And this will not happen in the way that they would anticipate. I mean, the moment that you start seeing individuals pulling that stunt, a lot of people who have been on the fence get off the fence. A lot of people who have been staying home come out of their houses. And now you really got yourself a fight on your hands. And all those things that you have built yourself up into thinking the snowflakes were about just get swept away with a truth bomb. We don't put up with it. It's just simply that. We will not put up with it. Charlottesville should have been that indication. Right after Charlottesville, everybody started taking care of business. And we will do the same this time. We are not going to let a bunch of characters just undermine our freedoms, our liberties, because they can't get over themselves. That's not going to happen. We're going to fight it.
I do admire you for your optimism.
It's realism. There is realism in there.
And you don't fear that there might be attempt by some French organizations to set up physical bombs and maybe attack on an interracial basis to trigger and to further escalate things?
Well, anything's possible. Anything's possible. It's weird to say it like that, but yeah, that can most certainly happen. I do not want to discount the possibility that somebody will go out there and try to do some harm or will do some harm. Just last week, we arrested people who wanted to try to kidnap the governor of Michigan, and found out that they also wanted to kidnap the governor of Virginia. Now, I think they're being careful with the language. I don't see the benefit in kidnapping them. I think they actually wanted to indeed assassinate them, because that's one thing that we haven't seen yet in this political drama over the past 4 years. We have not seen a political assassination. We have seen attempts. We did see it from our side, actually, towards Ron Paul and Steve Scalise, but we haven't seen a successful political assassination, and that's usually because law enforcement in that particular case, in those particular cases, are on the ball and keep it from happening. But that is not to say they won't keep trying. People will not keep trying. So,
and you expect that to be to boomerang if they did pull off something like that?
I would say if they pulled off something like that, again, people will stand up and take notice. I think that could also be a reason why it hasn't happened, because, again, once things go down that way, people feel that they need to start taking action so that it doesn't happen again, so that it doesn't go too much farther. Any kind of aggressive action on that part from the right results in that kind of action. And I would just simply leave it at that.
Yeah. Now, Fox and other media on the right are increasingly focusing on the expression of aggression on behalf of BLM or Antifa members in protest, such as intimidating diners at restaurants, etc. And they're also conflating looting and property damage with the protests for political purposes. With any decentralized movement, there are always going to be some individuals who act counterproductively or stupidly, and this is no difference. But are you concerned at all that with the way that these things can play into others' side narratives?
I don't think that those that are out there that are in the middle of all of that unrest are concerned about the optics. They are frustrated. They're actually fighting the people that Fox News aren't talking about, the ones that are initiating and provoking a lot of what you see in the streets, the police, the far right groups. And I think we who are concerned, those who are concerned about such things taking place, really need to just start focusing on where those frustrations are coming from, and address them. They don't want to be out there in the middle of all that. I mean, when the Proud Boys had their rally on the 26th of September in Portland, Oregon, they wanted that. And anti-fascists in Portland said, no, we're not giving it to you. You go have your rally in your little area and we'll go somewhere else. Because it's enough. Enough is enough. But you're not going to keep on coming into our city and causing this kind of upheaval. We're tired. We're tired. You did it all summer. You did it for the past 3 years. And we want our city back. That's why the mayor of Portland right now, the current mayor, is in trouble. Is in trouble right now. He may lose the election to someone who has called herself anti-fascist, Antifa. So, because they felt that he was not addressing their concerns, and among other things.
Mm-hmm. Now, can you characterize what you would? There's a popular perception of Antifa, and there's the reality. Can you characterize what you know of the scope of Antifa's work? What is the ratio of research, doxing, interaction, and street fights?
I think it's more research than street fighting, really. I think it's more about not working on their timetable, which would mean that we go into we're just showing up at their rallies and leaving it at that. No, I think it's more about trying to make sure that they do not have the ability to function. And that does not get handled just in the streets alone. That means that you're going to have to do your research, recognize who is who and what is what that's out there causing the society harm, causing the community harm, and then letting that community know. More to the point, not getting bogged down with any kind of narrative or propaganda that draws away from the truth of the situation. And that's another thing about Antifa that you can also rely on. We will basically tell you the truth about a certain person. We don't have to lie. They have to lie about us. I mean, I remember telling somebody in a speaking engagement earlier this year, it says their greatest strength is telling lies about us, and our greatest strength is telling the truth about them. And that alone has caused more upheaval than anything they have ever thrown at us. You know? And I think that's one of the reasons why they have to look at us as being these violent outliers who are destroying society as we know it, or destroying the nation as we know it. But when you then listen to them, and they'll tell you that we're starting forest fires in Oregon, or we're setting buildings ablaze in Philadelphia, and you have to pull back and say, okay, that's not true. So why do they feel they have to lie? We avoid that trap.
By the way, just a reminder to anybody who's watching that you could ask questions in the as a super chat. So if you have anything that you'd like to ask Daryl, that's your time. I also wanted to discuss the following. The neo-fascists and ethno-nationalists pride themselves in red pilling, as they call it. So that's means looking straight at the truth of racial relations, and even if it's uncomfortable. Now, do you see the opposite happening as more and more interracial people are becoming part of the BLM protests, recognizing that our future is survival and that our future survival is dependent on post-racial, post-ethnic, and maybe even post-national society?
Absolutely. I've seen this well before the current situation. I mean, Matthew Heimbach, the gentleman that I had spoken to in the earlier video, I remember telling him, he told me that he sees so many young people coming to join him. And I say, I see so many young people, so many more young people coming to join me. And I think that's really important. I think because we are a part of a cross section of today's society, we prevail a lot more than they prevail. Yes, over the past couple of years, they have been able to bring more young people to their crowd, to their side, or to be more succinct, they have allowed a lot of young people to come out of their shell that already had problems. They are not getting new recruits. They're getting louder recruits. And as I had pointed out, in Charlottesville, even though they were feeling their oats in Charlottesville, them coming out has caused them more damage than anything that has happened to Antifa over the past 3 or 4 years since. Because people took notice and recognized who the bad people were. And that's one of the reasons why they had to rebrand, why they had to change tactics. And in the end, it doesn't work because that's not where the direction society is going.
So your sense is that they're losing this cultural or metapolitics war.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They've been losing it for a long time, and they know they've been losing. They know they've been losing. Hence, me saying that Donald Trump's presidency is a Hail Mary for them. Once he's gone, that's the end of it. But we still have others on the horizon trying to do something. We still have problems that we will have to address. Not the least of which, perhaps, not being able to vote for the people that we want to vote for. And that's another discussion for another time.
Yep.
Lesser of two evils is going to die a cruel death after this election.
Can you talk a little bit about the organization you founded, the One People's Project and IDAVOX as well?
Well, One People's Project started 20 years ago, and it was in response to a white supremacist rally that took place in Morristown, New Jersey. And we had a website to let people know what kinds of things we could expect at that particular rally. And then after the rally, we said, why don't we just keep this going? And then we started turning it into more or less an anti-fascist info shop, where we would write stories about what's going on from day to day. And it grown. It simply had grown. And it kind of like grown beyond One People's Project's first website. So 5 years ago this week, we started IDAVOX, which was named after Ida B. Wells, who was doing this kind of work, telling the story of everyone, telling the stories that no one wanted to talk about, the lynchings in her day. We're talking about the fascism in our day. No one really wanted to talk about that, so we did. And like I said, they've been particularly successful. It has definitely, in the wake of everything that's been going on over the past 4 years, it's caused a lot of people to stand up and take notice and realize that we definitely had things to share that you needed to know. And I'm quite thankful that people have taken notice. And all I say is that the end game is to stop all of this nonsense that we have been seeing. We need to be a lot more proactive than even we have been, and hopefully we can help with that with the materials that we have on our site.
And how can people learn more about it?
Now, One People's Project is at onepeoplesproject.com. Idavox, IDAVOX.com is the other website. They have Idavox OPP at Idavox OPP, and at One People's PROJ is on Twitter. My email address, my Twitter handle and Instagram handle is DLamontJenkins. And I also have, you can also see me on Netflix in a documentary called Alt-Right Age of Rage. And we also have, and I also had produced, as you mentioned earlier, a movie called Skin, which was about a white supremacist that I helped get out of the white supremacist scene. And it stars Jamie Bell, Vera Farmiga, Danielle McDonald, Mike Coulter, who played me. People might know him from the TV show Evil, as well as playing Luke Cage on the Netflix series.
I was going to ask that the next question. How close has this depiction been to people you've actually helped distance themselves from the previous clan life? And what is that experience like for you?
Well, it's funny because it was pretty close to it, because the one thing that's important for me, I mean, remember, my first obligation is going to be to the people that they could hurt. So I'm not actually seeking them out, trying to encourage them to get out. I try to plant those seeds whenever I get the chance, which is why you see me talk to them like that. But in the end, if they don't get out, I have to handle it. We all do. If they do want to get out, I'm there. You know, we'll talk and we'll see what direction you want to go in. And that's been successful quite a bit. I can't put a number on how many people I helped get out, but I have gotten a good number of people out. When they do get out, they help us try to stop their old crowd from causing any more harm. And an interesting thing too, because while we were shooting the movie, I was asked, would you like to expand this? What would a program of yours, could you set up a program in which you can help other white nationalists, other white supremacists and such get out on a grander scale? My attitude about that is, if I do that, it won't just be white nationalists. They're not the only ones in the world that need help. You know, there's gangbangers out there that want to get out. There's folks who are radicalized that need de-radicalization. There are folks who are in cults. There are people who have tried to make their lives worth a damn, that ended up getting into things that they did not really belong in and should not have gone into. They went in a bad direction. So they all need help. And not only can we help everyone get out of those kinds of things, they can all be in a room together helping each other out. Because in the end, it isn't about what they believe or what they were told to believe. It's about who they are and about what they want in their lives, ultimately. That has nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with them. And that's where you want to get at. That was my father's attitude when he was a drug counselor. I mean, his attitude was, if you're addicted to drugs, I'm going to handle all your addictions. Whatever addiction you have, alcohol, sex, whatever, food addiction, whatever. Because one addiction is going to power the others. So my attitude is, one person trying to get out of a bad situation, bad circles, can help others get out of bad circles. So if and when we set up such programs, that's how I'm going to do it.
Great. And before I wrap up our interview, I wanted to check with our producer Oz, and any of if he has any questions or if there's any super chat questions.
I don't think any questions are out there. They're having a good conversation, though.
That's always good. Well, and did you have any questions, Oz?
No, not today. I appreciate the clarification. Antifa is not some group. It's an ideology that is growing and growing. We want to get rid of all the fascists, no matter which party they belong to.
Yep. Well, Dare Lamont Jenkins, thank you so much for joining us and for your time with us. We appreciate it greatly.
Man, thank you, and let's do this again.
All right.
Right. You have some announcements,
Good job.
Amos. What's coming up next?
Next, we have the next show is going to be about Trump's big bet and the likely post-elections game, and we're going to delve into possible scenarios and such of what may transpire after the day of elections.
Fantastic.
Next Wednesday.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Great show. Have a great day. And to the chat, thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful. And we're going to go out here with a couple of credits, and we'll see you next time.